So the 200-year-old Russian leather.
Yes.
I mean, I was talking to a mate about it the other day, and I showed him some photos, and yeah, you made that watch strap and that sort of stuff. And I tried to find some,
Yeah.
and good luck, pretty much.
Yeah. I don't think
What's
there is any available for sale anywhere. Not to my knowledge, anyway. It was more readily available going back some time, but
yeah,
but really, there's a few small people like us who have some, and Cleverly, I think, has some. I think Swain Aidney Brigg, no, Purdy's probably have some, but basically it's all gone
yeah,
in as much as it's all with the people who will ultimately make stuff with it.
yeah,
And I don't think the people who make stuff with it have very much left, really, at all,
yeah,
because it was all recovered a long time ago.
yeah. Yes,
It's not still. There's still quite a lot on the sea bottom, but I think all of it that can be recovered has been recovered,
yeah,
and it's obviously by night. There's a ship's worth, and that's it, and it was recovered quite a long time ago.
yeah.
So yeah, it's basically unavailable.
Wow.
I come across kind of offcuts and things like that from time to time from people, just from contacts in the trade. But really, basically, it is no longer commercially available, other than as a product from somebody that's got some.
Yeah. So could you tell the story of the how what had like
Of the
just
leather,
yeah, and sort of
roughly,
how you got hands on it.
I'm not a massive. Well, the I know a guy who knows the person that did the recovering,
Wow.
and I get my leather from him, basically, and he's got a little bit left,
Yeah.
and I hope to get a little bit more from him at some point,
Mhm.
but that's it, basically.
Yeah.
So as ever, it's who you know rather than what you know.
Yeah.
Um, but he was a friend of the guy that did the diving. Um, so he made cases from this stuff kind of in the 70s and
Wow.
80s,
Wow.
when it was a bit expensive, but it was not, it was a cool and interesting leather with a good
Yeah.
story, and it might have been half as expensive again as normal leather, but that was it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't particularly rare or anything, because there was a whole shipload, and you don't really think, well, in 30 years this will run out and it'll be worth a fortune.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just lucky to know him, really. So yeah, that's where we get ours from. Can't mention any names and all of that kind of stuff, obviously, but yeah, that's where we get ours from.
Yeah.
Um, and it's nice to have it like one step away from the original finder, because I wouldn't be at all surprised if there isn't stuff with rather dodgy provenance kicking around,
Yeah.
to be perfectly honest. But
Yeah.
at least I can be confident that I know exactly where ours did come from.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. So it was. I'm just looking it up. So the Russian reindeer leather
Russian
stamps
reindeer.
stamped in the
Yeah,
1786. So when you
1786 in the.
oh, go on.
I was going to say in the Bristol Sound. The whether in fact it is reindeer, nobody really knows. There's no
Okay.
actual proof it's reindeer. It was looked at by a group of experts when it was recovered, and they all scratched their chin, and they thought, well, not sure what this is. Possibly it could be reindeer. To my knowledge, it's never been DNA tested or anything. I
Yeah.
don't know if you can even do that with leather of this vintage. But the consensus of opinion was it was reindeer. But of this type of leather, I think 98% or something of it ever made was in fact calf. So the balance of probability, I think, is actually it's calf, but officially it's reindeer.
Yeah.
Um, because it seems incredibly unlikely that, given how small an amount of the leather that was made was reindeer, that this is reindeer.
Okay.
But perhaps I'm being too literal in my interpretation of the numbers.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting leather. It's an output of revolutionary Russia, and it was a fairly key czarist output, and the method of production kept secret. I don't know how it was controlled, but anyway, it was kept secret. Um, and after the fall of the Tsars, the secret was lost, and thus the leather stopped being made anymore.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, which actually, but it was a really big production item. It was really common. It was used for loads of stuff. It was bookbinding. It was upholstery. It was military stuff. I can't remember if it was used for shoes, but I suspect it was for like all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Because rather like cedar, it's quite oily. It's quite repellent for insects and all the kind of stuff that would have been important 150 years ago. So its story is really interesting. It's a really interesting leather to work with. I was working with some this morning. It's two watch straps, the leather from different skins, and they're entirely different to each other, different color, different texture, look totally different. If I didn't know exactly what they were, if they were if I put them in front of you, you wouldn't identify it as the same leather in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So is it?
But obviously,
Oh, you can. Sorry.
I was just going to say, it's obviously the conditions the leather's been in under the sea varies and all of that kind of stuff. So you get quite different kind of looks from different pieces.
Yeah. So is it? So they don't know how it was tanned at all. They have no idea.
There's no historical documents detailing how it was
Okay.
tanned.
Yeah.
People have researched it, and like we work with bakers quite a lot in Devon, and their cur de Russie that we use for stuff like our attaché and stuff is basically a modern version of the Russian calf.
Yeah.
And they did it by research. Basically, they worked out how it was done, and did lots of prototyping, and produced a leather that was basically identical. There's no method that has been written down as such. It's only through kind of working stuff out that we know, really.
Yeah. So I say bakers know how they actually sell like a replica sort of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which we use a lot. The cur de Russie leather that we use is effectively a replica of the Russian reindeer or Russian calf. It's calf leather.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much indistinguishable, really, from the Metacaterina leather, really.
Yeah. So with that reindeer calf, the Russian leather, is it a thick leather or is it a thin? Like what sort of would it be? 1.5 millimeters.
It varies.
Okay.
No, it's normally thicker than that, but it varies quite a lot. It does vary quite a lot. You can find it up to 2.5. It's quite a variable leather. Their splitters would have been pretty inconsistent, and I think the leather on the ship it would have been relatively unsplit, so it would have been thinner at the shoulder and stuff like that. But yeah, it kind of varies from kind of 1.4 to probably 2.5.
Yeah. So do you have much of it? Because you said
a little bit left.
Okay.
Not masses, like not making a briefcase worth, but a bit. Yeah, we've got a few watch straps and stuff like that to hand, and maybe a wallet or two and things like that, and I might be able to get my hands on a little bit more, but yeah, like really small quantities.
Oh, that's remarkable. And it would be expensive to get some, I guess.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, and right, it's probably the rarest leather in the world, I suspect.
Wow. So when you do make your watch straps with it, because like you said, there probably would be knockoffs and all that sort of stuff. Do you have to provide like documentation to the customer to?
Not really. I mean, it's just kind of on trust, really, isn't it?
Okay.
Like we know the provenance, and people know us, and that's it, really. I mean, whether people want documentation and provenance, I'm not sure, but there isn't really any documentation or provenance for any of it, other than kind of from a company saying, well, this is Russian reindeer, because there was never any documentation provided with it in the first place.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fair.
So you kind of at that point you're already knackered, aren't you? Really, because if the guy that recovered it didn't provide any documentation, then any documentation after that
Yeah,
inherently is
that's
probably
true.
dubious. But no, it's simply it's yeah. Any provenance or any documentation anybody comes up with is probably fake anyway. So no.
Okay. Um. Yeah. So don't look for anyone who's selling you documentation.
No, if it has documentation, it's probably fake.
Yeah. Um.